What's going on, everybody? My name is King, and this is part 2 of Intro to Classes and Objects in Java. If you haven't seen the first one yet, I will leave a link to that video in the description below. Now, in this one, we are going to discuss access modifiers and getters and setters. Now, what are access modifiers? Access modifiers help us control the visibility of our classes, our methods, and our variables. Now, there's 4 different types of access modifiers, and that's going to be public, private, protected, and default. Now, protected and default might be a little hard to understand if you're not familiar with packages and inheritance. But let's start off with default. Default is the only one that does not have a special keyword, and default is gonna restrict visibility to packages. So as long as you're within the same package, you'll have access to that method or that variable from the different classes. Now let's take class vehicle as an example. So in class vehicle, all of our methods and our variables are set to default currently. And if we go up to classes and objects, you'll see that classes and objects has access to all of our variables and our methods because both of these classes are in the same package. Now, the next one I want to talk about is protected. Now, protected is pretty similar to default in that it allows visibility within the same package. The main difference is going to be protected will allow visibility to a subclass even if it's in a different package. So the next one we will discuss is going to be public. Now, public is the least restrictive access modifier that we have. Public is going to allow access to passengers from anywhere within our program. So anything that you set to public will be accessible from pretty much anywhere by anybody. It won't be locked down. A common place that public is used is going to be on outer classes, well, generally speaking, and then also on main method. And any method or variable that you want to be not restricted, you're going to set to public. Now, commonly what we are going to do is set our variables to private. What private does is private will restrict accessibility to this variable to just this class only. So outside of this class, the variable passengers will not be visible. If we go up to our classes and objects, you'll see that passengers now has a red underline, and that's because it is no longer visible outside of class vehicle. Now, like I was saying earlier, it's good practice to lock down to restrict your variables. Now, the only problem is being able to access it outside of this class. Now, the way that we take care of that problem is by using something called getters and setters. Getters and setters help us access private variables. But the difference is it gives us control of how we access those private variables. Now, an easy way to create getters and setters are going to be to come down here and right click, go down to source and hit generate getters and setters. And in our case, we want to create a getter and setter for all of our variables. So we'll hit select all and then generate. And as you can see, getters and setters generated a bunch of public methods for all of our variables. Now, the first one that we'll go over is going to be to return the value of passengers. Now, this method is set to public. It returns an integer, And the name of this method is called get passengers, and its only job is to return the value of passengers. Now the next one is also set to public, and we're not returning anything in this one, so it's set to void. And this one is called set passengers. It takes an argument of an integer named passengers, and you can name this anything you want, but good practice is going to be to call it whatever the variable name is. And this passengers is equal to passengers, and all this does is allow us to set a value to the instance of passengers. Now if we go up here, I am gonna get rid of all of this code because it's a little messy. And let's see. So now in order to set a value to the variable passengers in the instance of Tesla Model 3, we have to call the method set passengers and pass in a variable. In this case, pass in a value, an integer. In this case, it's going to be 5. So in order to check to make sure that this took, let me clear this so we can see it fresh. So we are going to do a system.out.println, and we are going to call Tesla Model 3 dot get passengers, and this should return the value that we just set to passengers, which is 5. So if I do a command save, function command shift F11, and you'll see that it returned the value of 5 in the console. So this is the basics of working with access modifiers and getters and setters. If you have any questions about it, or if you have anything that you'd like me to cover, please leave it in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for your time. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button.